Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to a Watchman Newscast live stream, coming to you live from New York City. I'm in NYC at TBN's New York City studio as we are filming an upcoming special on the rise of AI, that is artificial intelligence. Folks, everyone is talking about AI, it seems, over the past several months in particular. This genie, as they say, is now out of the bottle when it comes to AI. So we're putting together a 60-minute prime time special for TBN. Again, it's called The Rise of AI. It will air sometime in August. I will get you the air date here on the newscast as soon as I have it. But we're interviewing tech experts, members of Congress, Christian leaders for this 1 hour special, all about AI, how it impacts your life, and what are the biblical and prophetic implications of this game-changing and perhaps world-changing advancement in technology. What does the Bible say? What does the book of Revelation have to say about it? Folks, this is fascinating and very important subject matter that you will not want to miss, coming up very soon on TBN. Again, that's why I'm in New York City. I'm here through tomorrow. But in the meantime, as I'm talking AI here in New York, we had a very serious attempted breach of the Israel-Lebanon border by the Iran-backed terror group Hezbollah. Folks, this is breaking news today on the live stream. We are going to dig into it in a minute. By the way, we usually go for a full hour here on the live stream. We'd go between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern time. Today, we are cutting it at 4:30. So 30 minutes straight, tight, live here on the live stream, because right after this, I have to run and do another interview for that AI special that I mentioned. Thanks for your understanding. We'll be back next week for the full hour, like we always do from week to week here on the live stream. But today, 30 good minutes, and we'll leave a few minutes still at the end to take your questions. But again, we've got breaking news. Be sure, if you haven't yet, to subscribe, by the way, to the Watchman News channel. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. When we have breaking news like this, 3 Hezbollah members today, Wednesday, July 12th, approached the Israel-Lebanon border fence. Who knows what they were attempting to do, folks? According to the Israel Defense Forces, these Hezbollah operatives were attempting to damage, perhaps even breach, that Israel-Lebanon border fence, yet they fled. Why did they flee? Because Israel had planted, I'm sure all along that border fence, along the Lebanon border, a non-lethal explosive device. Non-lethal, obviously, meaning it is not designed to kill anyone, but it is certainly designed to make you halt, move away from the border, and move on your way. And that's exactly what happened today with these 3 Hezbollah operatives. The IDF says they have video as well. They say they approached the fence, and as soon as they put their paws on the fence, that non-lethal explosive device went off, and these 3 Hezbollah members fled. Now, a few hours after that, again, this all unfolded today. It's breaking news, Wednesday, July 12th. And you may say, well, big deal. They approached the fence. There was a non-lethal explosive device. The situation was diffused for the moment. What's the big deal? Well, it's a very big deal, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The main reason is, look, we've seen, including 17 years ago to the day, in the second Israel-Lebanon war, Israel went toe-to-toe with Hezbollah July and August 2006. That started with what some considered, not that big a deal. 2 Israeli soldiers were kidnapped along the Israel-Lebanon border in that incident back in 2006, but many said, well, it's not worth a war. Well, Israel had other ideas. The Israel Defense Forces leave no man behind, and they wanted to get those 2 kidnapped soldiers back from Hezbollah, and Israel went in, rightfully, and struck Hezbollah and struck them hard, to the point where Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, said at the time, wow, essentially, if we would have known Israel would have had such a fierce response, we probably would have never kidnapped those 2 IDF soldiers. I say all that to say, expect the unexpected in today's Middle East. And what seems to be perhaps not a massive incident could spark a massive regional war. It is that much of a tinderbox in the region right now. So needless to say, the act of approaching if you are a hostile, an Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist, the act of approaching the Israel-Lebanon border fence with bad intentions could certainly spiral out of control. Now, thankfully, Israel diffused this using the non-lethal device. But folks, look, if you're watching the newscast on a regular basis over the past few months, you know that this is just the latest provocation from Hezbollah along that northern border, the Israel-Lebanon border, which had been relatively, even mostly quiet since that 06 war. Look, during that war 17 years ago, and it launched 17 years ago today, July 12, 2006, during that war, Israel certainly established deterrence to its northern border with Hezbollah, in that Hezbollah mostly in the ensuing 17 years has not tried anything major along the border. Now, they've allowed other groups to operate there, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but Hezbollah, the entity known as Hezbollah, has, for the most part, for the past 17 years, since taking a whooping from the Israel Defense Forces, Hezbollah has mostly held its fire. But folks, there are signs that that may be changing, and changing rapidly, as we've talked about that prophetic Great Northern War. And again, we'll break this down in a minute, but a little bit more backdrop on what went down today. We had not only, as I mentioned, the attempted breach of the security fence, but also a few hours after that, Hezbollah, as they were described in one media outlet, Hezbollah activists. We prefer to call them here in the newscast, terrorists, because Hezbollah is a specially designated global terrorist organization, according not only to the United States, where I'm sitting right now, but also to Israel. It's an organization backed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, and which is devoted to wiping the state of Israel off the map. So I'm sorry if I think activists is a bit too kind of a description to describe the likes of Hezbollah. Nonetheless, Hezbollah today near the town of Metula, a place you've seen here on the newscast many times, a great town in northern Israel, beautiful, scenic. Well, right on the other side of the Metula border today, we had Hezbollah setting off fireworks and setting fires. And again, another attempt at a provocation. And the IDF basically sent a message to them as well, and a warning to back off. But again, this was commemorating, if that's the word you could use, the 17-year anniversary of the start of that second Lebanon war that pitted Israel against Hezbollah. Now, let's kind of lay out what's been going down over the past few months and why this is building and building and building towards something I believe could be quite nasty to Israel's north. Again, we've called it the Great Northern War here on the newscast. Before I do that, hello, everyone. I'm just looking at our live chat, scrolling down the side of the screen here on my laptop here in New York City. And we have people, as always, from around the world joining us right now, across the United States, of course, but literally on every continent. And we like to say there's some penguins in Antarctica on their iPads and iPhones right now, and even they are watching. But in all seriousness, we've got people from Africa, Europe, Asia, and beyond joining us for such a time as this. And you're joining us on a day where we have breaking news, where the tensions between Israel and Hezbollah are maybe reaching a crescendo, folks. A little bit of backdrop the last few months. As I said, in terms of the last few years, since 2006, mostly quiet along the Lebanon border, mostly. No major outbursts of violence along that border in 17 years. Yet in the past few months, we've seen a few things. Number one, back in March, a Hezbollah operative, and this incident I'm about to lay out for you, that may very well have been enough to spark a war. To me, it was that serious. A Hezbollah operative crossed the border from Lebanon, infiltrated Israel, traveled to Megiddo Junction in specific, which is usually a very heavily trafficked area in northern Israel, especially during the morning rush. He planted a bomb, and reportedly a very large bomb, at Megiddo Junction. Now, folks, if Megiddo Junction was packed with people and cars like it usually is, this could very well have been a mass casualty event. I see a viewer right now saying he is from French Lick, Indiana. Stephen, welcome. And I bring that up because when I think of French Lick, Indiana, I think of my favorite basketball player of all time, the one and only Larry Bird. And I say that as a devout Sixers fan, but nonetheless, gotta love Larry legend, Larry Bird. Okay, had to mention that. It's rare that I see French Lick, Indiana. And when I think of French Lick, I think of one and only Larry legend. But back to the not so legendary Hezbollah and their antics, and stronger than antics, this bomb was planted, as we laid out here in the newscast. One Israeli was injured and injured seriously in that bombing. But again, thankfully, Israel, I can't say they dodged a bomb, but dodged a bullet in the sense that this could have been a mass casualty event. Clearly, there was deadly intent by Hezbollah in planning this large bomb in northern Israel back in March. Okay. Fast forward to April, we've talked a lot here on the newscast about the coming multi-front war between Israel and Iran's proxies. And one of those fronts obviously is Lebanon, where Iran's most lethal proxy, Hezbollah, lives and breathes. Well, back in April, just around Passover, as a matter of fact, that very week, we saw rockets launched at Israel from multiple fronts, from Gaza, from Syria, and also from Lebanon. You may say, wait a minute, rockets launched from southern Lebanon, was that Hezbollah? No, that is southern Lebanon is Hezbollah's power base, but Hezbollah allows other terror groups to operate from southern Lebanon, including, you guessed it, Hamas, which launched dozens of rockets at Israel back in April, not only from Gaza, but from southern Lebanon as well. Again, Hezbollah, just as its masters in Tehran do, claiming deniability, plausible, I call it implausible deniability. Hezbollah saying, yes, the rockets were fired from Lebanese territory, Hezbollah land in southern Lebanon, but we didn't do it. We can't stop we don't see everything that goes on in southern Lebanon. Actually, yes, you do. Hezbollah knows exactly what's going on in southern Lebanon, in every nook and cranny of that region. And certainly Hezbollah is allowing Palestinian terror groups like Hamas to operate from southern Lebanon. So that's an increased provocation. The bomb planted in March, the rockets fired in April, and I believe a few more launched last week as well from Lebanon. And then lastly, and folks, look, today, obviously what happened, as we just detailed for you, but another major brewing storm on the border. We reported this on the newscast, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And we said we'd come back to you with news when we had more news. Well, we have more news. There has not been a resolution to this instance where Hezbollah has crossed into Israeli territory near the Mount Dov region, near the Sheba Farms region, in northern Israel. It's on the Israeli side of the Israel-Lebanon border. It's officially Israeli territory. Yes, it is remote, and it's not in the shadow of Israeli population centers, but nonetheless, Hezbollah has crossed into Israeli territory. Again, in the shadow of Mount Dov, and literally, they have set up shop there. There were 2 tents that Hezbollah erected there on the, again, folks, on the Israeli side of the border. This is a violation of Israel's sovereignty by the Iran-backed Hezbollah. How many Hezbollah operatives are there? We're not quite sure. One of the tents was taken down since I last reported on this about 2 weeks ago. But another of the tents, a Hezbollah tent, is still up on Israeli territory. An enemy entity devoted to Israel's destruction has set up shop on the Israeli side of the Israel-Lebanon border, and they don't seem to be going anywhere. Now, reportedly, there are up to 10 Hezbollah operatives there right now, manning this tent. Not quite clear what their intentions are long-term or even in the short term, but folks, you're not hearing this reported. I know you're shocked to hear this, but you're not hearing this reported in the mainstream media. Imagine that. That's why you're here with us on the Watchman every day. Nonetheless, it's been very quiet, this story, which has potentially major ramifications and could be, no pun intended, quite explosive very soon. But there are some very serious deliberations going on right now in the halls of power in Israel. And the debate is what to do about essentially what is a Hezbollah outpost, which has been established on the Israeli side of the Israel-Lebanon border. Obviously, this is a non-starter for Israel. It's just not sustainable. Israel can't accept this. And yet Hezbollah doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So what to do? How will Hezbollah, number one, react to the inevitable Israeli reaction to Hezbollah setting up shop on Israeli territory? Folks, talk about a tinderbox. Israel is going to be compelled sooner rather than later to act against this Hezbollah outpost. Again, this is unsustainable. It cannot stand. Israel cannot allow Hezbollah to become entrenched on the Israeli side of the border. It's not happening. So the deliberation right now in Jerusalem is, and at the Kuria in Tel Aviv, where Israeli defense officials spend their time, is, okay, what do we do? Israel has been kind of slow rolling it the past few weeks and allowing the UN, UNIFIL in particular, which has a presence on that Lebanon border, an arm of the UN, allowing them to try and negotiate a way out of this. And apparently the U.S. ambassador to Lebanon is kind of playing a mediator role as well and trying to resolve this peacefully. And hey, everyone wants to see this resolved peacefully. That's usually not Hezbollah's MO to do things peacefully, but nonetheless, everyone would like to see this resolved and a crisis averted, of course. So Israel, again, has been kind of, I don't want to say slow rolling. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but watching, waiting, allowing others to kind of mediate in the middle and trying to resolve this without opening fire on Hezbollah. The problem with that is the longer Hezbollah stays, the bolder Hezbollah becomes. Again, the one tent was taken down, but the one remains. What does Iran want? What does Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, a puppet of the Iranian regime, the Hezbollah leader, what does he want? Are they doing this as a provocation which will lead to a larger conflict? Is there a battle plan, so to speak, to eventually just shut things down with this tent and mosey back on the Lebanon side of the border? We're not clear about that just yet. But folks, it's kind of coming to 0 hour here, especially after these provocations today along the border, where Israel is saying, okay, we have to do something about this Hezbollah outpost. So what is Israel going to do? We are watching, we are waiting to see if Israel will indeed act militarily against this small Hezbollah outpost. What would that military action look like? I have no idea. But the goal of the IDF clearly would be to push these Hezbollah terrorists back onto the Lebanon side of the border, back into southern Lebanon, which again, Hezbollah rules with an iron fist. So there you have it in terms of what's going on the Israel-Lebanon border right now. Tinderbox is probably an understatement. And where is this all heading? As just a quick reminder, we're going till 4:30. Don't go anywhere. We've got 10 minutes left. And in those 10 minutes, we will take your questions. Send them along. We still have time. You still have time for questions here. But what is the next step in this prophetically? Where is this all heading? And why do I ask that? Because we've talked many times here on the shows. I just pull some of your questions up here. Pardon me. We've talked many times here on the show about the coming prophetic wars that Israel clearly will be in the middle of. Sadly, we don't want to see that, but the Bible's pretty clear that Israel is the center of every coming prophetic event. It's the apple of God's eye. It's his land. And Israel, in the end, although it will not be easy, things turn out just fine and then some. I've read the end of the book when it comes to Israel and dealing with Israel's enemies, because the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. That said, we've talked a bunch here on the newscast about that coming Gog-Magog war. Funny name, I know. Do yourself a favor, go back and read the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, where the prophet Ezekiel, with God speaking through him, lays out a future prophetic war where Israel, look, in a latter days invasion will be besieged by a coalition force led by, I believe, Russia, and including Iran as well, or what the Bible called Persia. That was the ancient name of Iran. It was ancient Persia, a Bible land, by the way. Think of Mordecai, Esther, Cyrus, and more. But in the run-up to that Ezekiel invasion, and by the way, that Ezekiel invasion force meets its demise on the mountains of Israel, where God Almighty shows himself to the world in a mighty, undeniable way that he hasn't in 2,000 years even. It's going to be that much of an earth-shaking, literally, reaction by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to this attempted invasion of Israel. And the world, let's just say, will take notice. I said undeniable. Some will still deny, but those who know that it was God's hand, that it is God's hand that will be involved. But what happens before that? How do we get to that point of that Gog-Magog war? Well, many have discussed Psalm 83. And we had our good friend Bill Salas on the show. He's literally written the book on Psalm 83, a few, I believe. Bill's great prophetic teacher, good friend. On Psalm 83, I can't say that I have a rock solid view of when exactly that's going to fall or if it happened already. There's a school of thought saying it happened thousands of years ago. There's a school of thought saying that it happened in 1948 during Israel's war for independence, that it happened in 1967 during the Six-Day War. Another school of thought says it's still to come. Will that precede the war of Gog and Magog? Unclear to me. But what I do know is some sort of war, regional war, I believe, will precede that. I think Isaiah 17, when Damascus meets its demise, that could very well happen before that Ezekiel war as well. But I've called it the Great Northern War, where that ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, whether it's Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the Houthis to the south in Yemen, those various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, all backed by the Iranian regime, unleash their arsenal of tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of rockets and missiles, not to mention a good deal of attack drones against Israel. It's the ring of fire. I've called it the Great Northern War because I believe it will begin in the north, with Hezbollah going toe-to-toe, well, Israel going toe-to-toe with Hezbollah and Iran in Lebanon and in Syria. But the likes of Hamas, quite possibly the Houthis in Yemen and others, will also throw their hats in the ring and get involved in this as well. And that ring of fire will ignite. The good news is the Israel Defense Forces are prepared for this. They've been preparing for years. They know it's going to be a multi-front war. That's number one. Number two, and much, much, much more importantly, the God of Israel will have something to say about this before it's all said and done. Just go back and read the book of Psalms, where it says on a few occasions that God sees the plans being hatched by Israel's enemies, and he quite literally laughs. So keep that in mind. Don't get disheartened. Don't get discouraged when we talk about all of this. But I've called it the Great Northern War. Is that Psalm 83? Some believe it is. I don't know, but it seems that there will certainly be a war before that Ezekiel war, no doubt. So what we see right now, obviously, as things ramp up north between Hezbollah and Israel, you do the math. And again, I said the word unsustainable a minute ago, folks, and I'll repeat that. Hezbollah has some 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel on Israel's doorstep, increasingly precision-guided munitions as well, which could really hit targets in Israel with greater accuracy, greater precision, all at the marching orders of the Iranian regime, which is devoted to Israel's destruction. Israel can't abide by this much longer. Maybe this tent incident that we discussed could lead to something larger, sadly, but it is sad because Israel wants to just live. Israelis just want to live their lives, including Israelis in northern Israel, but Hezbollah and Iran have other plans and other aims. So Israel is going to have to deal with this. The question is it going to be sooner rather than later? Certainly when Hezbollah continues these provocations along the border, Israel is much more likely to act and perhaps even take decisive action. We're keeping an eye on all of this for you. A few questions before we go. Let's see. Jeff Hicks, and if you have any questions, send them in. We got a few minutes here to get to them. Jeff Hicks asks, why is Hezbollah so popular in southern Lebanon? Jeff, great question. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, and I won't, but the script flipped in Lebanon during that brutal Lebanon civil war, which broke out in the 1970s, stretched into the 1980s, still violence even in the 90s, and still periodic spasms of violence there. And of course, 3 years ago, we had the massive explosion in Beirut. So Lebanon, which is a beautiful nation, has seen a lot of heartbreak, a lot of violence, a lot of tragedy over the past several decades. In the early 1980s, 1982, Iran created Hezbollah. Now, when I said the script was flipped, Lebanon used to be, I believe, about 75% Christian and 25% Muslim. That's completely flipped. You have Shia, you have Sunni, you still have a Christian minority there, the Maronite minority in particular in Lebanon, but Shia Islam holds sway in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah is a Shia organization. So, Jeff, that's the simple answer, but the more important answer is that Hezbollah quite skillfully and cleverly has painted itself to the beleaguered people of southern Lebanon as essentially their saviors. And they're supplying social services and food and everything else to the people of southern Lebanon who are extremely needy. And they're looking to Hezbollah to fill their needs, their everyday needs, as Lebanon's economy craters and inflation through the roof. And that Beirut blast 3 years ago certainly sent matters into overdrive, sent the Lebanese economy spiraling downward. So that's one answer. Hezbollah now is riding in on the white horse and saying, hey, we've got the answers and we'll supply you with everything you need, even gas for your cars, because things in southern Lebanon are an utter and absolute mess right now. The other piece to it is, look, Shia Islam holds sway there, and there are certainly fellow travelers who agree with the Hezbollah agenda who live there. But another important point that can't be discounted is that many in southern Lebanon, or even Shia Muslims who are Shia like Hezbollah, are not like Hezbollah. They don't agree with Hezbollah's agenda. And they're essentially being held hostage by Hezbollah to the point where, look, I've been on that border many times. I've stared across that border, and to the point where Hezbollah literally has taken over homes in southern Lebanon and has used them as weapons depots, rocket depots. These seemingly peaceful homes in the Lebanese countryside mask a much more sinister presence, and that is Hezbollah inside these homes. So in many cases, Jeff, the people of southern Lebanon don't have a choice. So that's a very difficult situation for the people, many in southern Lebanon, who don't want to live under their Hezbollah overlords, but are forced to. And again, that situation is certainly coming to a head. I think we have time for one more quick question, and then I got to roll and do this last interview. Let's see. Jeff, I know you have a follow-up there, but I want to go to someone else just to spread it around a little bit. Let's see. CK asks a question. The Ezekiel 37, was that prophecy fulfilled this last week? CK, you'd have to be a little more specific about that. But if we're talking about the dry bones prophecy in Ezekiel 37, yes, I believe that was fulfilled when Israel became a nation once again in 1948. The skin, the flesh came back on the bones, the dry bones, and they walked again, and Israel became a nation once again in 1948. So yes, I do believe part of that prophecy has certainly been fulfilled. What I was referring to earlier with that Gog-Magog war was Ezekiel 38 and 39. Folks, sadly, I got to go. I got to do some more filming for this artificial intelligence special. Hey, reminder to subscribe. Click the notification bell. We'll be back with you tomorrow right here on the Watchman Newscast. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never Hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.